I know what you're all thinking. I put on too much eyeshadow today. But something you're also probably thinking about is we recently got a whole lot of set photos for James Gunn's Superman that have gone viral, and we're going to get more as of the release of this video because they're supposed to be shooting again on July 8th. And they've definitely caused quite the buzz on the internet and different kinds of reactions, and there seem to be two different camps for the reactions. It's the first camp is the optimists who think that James Gunn has already saved Superman and that he's already made the most incredible movie ever. And then there's the other camp that think that the suits look awful and that are the camp of cynics that believe that James Gunn is not fit to do this. Now, getting into this, I want to express that I was definitely on the side of the cynics before we got these set photos, and I'm not saying that I'm not cynical about it, still somewhat, but let me explain how I really feel about these set photos and both sides of the argument, and if James Gunn is really going to save Superman and the DC universe at large, and if any of the naysayers, and I was a naysayer at the beginning, are going to be proven wrong by these set photos. And let's just get into it. So first of all, I'm not I'm not ready to return to DC. I've taken a long break because I was just so tired of the constant drama, and I was so tired that, so many of their projects just seemed to be the same stories over and over again and told in a very mediocre way. I was just so done with DC. So I'm not necessarily ready to get back into all of it, and I still feel a little bit of hesitancy for it, which is why this video took so long to get out. But at the same time, there are things that I'm seeing that make me feel like maybe there is cause for optimism in the future. Now, let's start with what we have gotten from Superman. First of all, we got the picture that was supposed to be the reveal photo, and it was awful. Did not set a good tone for changing Superman for the mainstream public after everyone's been tired of the dark and gritty Henry Cavill, Zack Snyder stuff. It was not a good photo to release in terms of that tone. It was a very odd position that he was in. I think that they were trying to hide the trunks, and everyone thought it was overly photoshopped. It was just not a good photo at all, and it made me think, yep, this is going to be a bust, because once again, I already was very cynical about it. Then we started getting set photos, and the set photos amazed me by the polar opposite reaction overall. That you see Superman in broad daylight, you see him in the traditional suit, and you see him smiling, and everyone went crazy when they saw David Cornsweet smiling, and it's like, oh, Superman's completely saved, that's exactly who he is. Like, it's not, now, I want to temper expectations a little bit, because some of these things I'm going to talk about look good, but at the same time, you have to remember, they're not hard to do. Like, to look at Zack Snyder's Justice League and Man of Steel and say, okay, people want bright, optimistic Superman, let's show him smiling in the sunlight. That wasn't difficult to do, and they already did it with the Superman and Lois TV show. So, as nice as it is to see Superman smile, I want to say that is not a groundbreaking thing for somebody to do, just to have Superman smiling. It does make me wonder why they didn't do something like that for the initial release photo, but I think that they learned their lesson a bit from that, because whenever you get set photos, they don't leak and stay up unless they want it to be on purpose. These set photos are there to advertise the film and get discussion about it. And so we saw Superman, and he looks like Superman. And the suit had a lot of polarizing reactions. There were people who were just, so rapturous about getting a comic-accurate Superman outfit. I thought it looked overly textured, and I thought it looked a little loose. And that is a carryover, I think, from James Gunn's experience with the MCU. What the MCU has done in order to have comic-accurate outfits that still look good on screen and don't look just like tights as they're kind of depicted as comics is to make them with thicker fabric, leather, lots of textures, look more like tactical suits than just tights. So that's what they're doing with Superman, and it's just, and I think that it's a little bit over designed. This almost looks a bit like cosplay. However, I'm going to defend it, because as much as everyone is bashing it, or I mean, the side of people that are bashing it, I say there's been a lot of times. I've been in this game for a while, watching all these reactions, and I say there have been so many times in the past where there will be set photos leaking out, and people will have a bad reaction to a suit and say it looks cheap or embarrassing, and then we'll get a trailer or some official photos, and it will look fine, because oftentimes suits are designed to look good under certain certain lighting, and they look better when they come out. We already got a look of it in that one photo that James Gunn released, and some of the same complaints apply, that it looked a little loose-fitting, that it looked over-designed, but I'm going to defend it again here, saying that if there's some flaws in it, if it could be tighter, if it could be a little simplified, then that's not going to kill a film. Like, people didn't like Captain America's outfit in the Avengers, and then they changed it and it was better. That's not going to make or break anything. So, it looks like Superman, that's fine. I am not particularly bothered by the costuming in the movie. If there's room for some improvement, then there's room for some improvement. That can happen. I don't think that everything that James Gunn can bring over from the MCU necessarily is going to work, though. But while I'm just kind of in the middle there, like, I have criticisms, but I don't think they're a big deal. I wasn't won over at this point when I was seeing the set photos, and I didn't really have much of a reaction to them because I wasn't on the level where I was enraptured by the rest of the Superman fan base, but I wasn't hating it either. But we got more and more set photos, and gradually I started to, I guess, see some of the vision for this film more. Where it changed is, first of all, we got a leaked scene of a bunch of the Superman characters, pretty much all of them getting out of a pod, and I saw some of the costuming for these characters, and Lois Lane looks like traditional Lois Lane, and I'm sure she's going to be great in the film. But I noticed, like, for Cat Grant, with her comically large glasses and all of that, and her, yellow hair and all this stuff, and even getting future set photos, seeing what the extras were wearing, it made me think that this movie might be going for something that is a combination of modern and retro, a little bit like how Batman the Animated Series did this sort of out-of-time feel for it, where you had old cars, you had some modern technology, it felt like it could happen at any time. And that was the first thing that made me kind of be interested in the movie more than I've been, and less skeptical, because I'm like, okay, are you stylizing this movie to Superman? Are you actually remembering his comic book groups as an actual comic book and doing a play off of that, making it feel more cartoonish, and by that I mean in a good way, a little bit similar to the Christopher Reeve Superman? And that got me interested if they were doing that, because you could do a standard, like, MCU, like a superhero film, or you could do something a little more stylized that is different than anything we've seen in live action recently, and that perked my interest and made me want to see more of this movie. And other things that I saw of it later, we saw a traditional scene of Superman flying with Lois. They look great together. We got a scene of Superman and Mr. Terrific, and it looks like Mr. Terrific is going to either get Crypto or something and be shot by him in the foot or something. So you can see the comedy there, and that's where I'm a little bit worried, because I don't want the James Gunn comedy to come out in a Superman movie. But to just do a really lighthearted, optimistic movie sounds good to me, but I'll get to that in a minute. But the thing that really sold me on it, though, to give me just a little bit of hope, I'm not saying that I'm really, really hyped yet, but there's this scene that we saw from the set photos where a bunch of kids run up to Superman. They run past the old superheroes that are going to be, I think, either the Justice Society or the JLA in this movie. They run past the old superheroes and run to Superman, and he gives them a hug. And that was very, very wholesome, and it kind of told me what this movie is going to try to be. And once again, it seems to be a very, very lighthearted movie. It seems to be a very optimistic movie, or at least about Superman fighting for an optimistic future. That was just such a wholesome scene, and something that I haven't seen from Superman in a very, very long time in a live-action film. And it also told me a little bit about the theme of the movie, that it's going to be about, the old superheroes or the old heroes of this time worked a certain way, and now Superman is coming in and doing things a different way, and there's going to be conflict and commentary there. So all of that, like, gradually turned me around from a major skeptic and cynic of this movie to think, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe this could really work, because here's the thing that I've been saying, in terms of, are movies connecting with an audience or not? Are we making the movies that people actually want to see? Something that I've contended for a little bit now is that after all that people have gone through in the last 5 or 10 years and all this misery, that people really want to see optimistic movies again. And that's why that Marvel was so popular. And that's why, as Marvel started to get more cynical and our heroes started to be torn down one way or another, that was one of the reasons why people started to be turned off. Like, I think that the reason that Top Gun Maverick was so popular is the insane optimism that it had coming right after 2020. And I've just been wondering, why haven't we been seeing more of that lately? So Superman, I'm wondering, is that going to fill that void? Is that really going to be another movie that's really uplifting and optimistic that we really need and is very, very true to what Superman is supposed to be? So that gave me a lot of hope for the film, and, combined with like the cartoonish elements and maybe being a bit more stylized, that actually gave me a lot of optimism for the film and makes me actually very curious to see a first trailer and see how it all comes together. I just hope that they continue with this very bright look and feel of the movie and not do something like that first set photo. However, you can't have it be style over substance. So there needs to be a good structure. There needs to be a good script behind this. There needs to be a good exploration of these themes that it's supposedly going to explore. That's where I'm still a bit cautious, because here is my unpopular opinion, and longtime subs will already know this. I'm actually not a big fan of Gunn as a director, and here's why. In terms of just talking about his work with superheroes, James Gunn has a very specific style of humor, and that humor is not for me. So when I watch his films, I have to be watching it just for the story, not for the humor and that kind of style. And I haven't seen him as the brilliant masterclass writer that I think people think he is. I actually enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy 2 the most out of any of the Guardians of the Galaxy films because of what it did with its themes of family. I don't think that the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is as well written as people think, and I have tried to get into that movie. I have really, really tried. But I think for a person, if you're just not into that type of humor and style, then the story isn't that great. And the same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I think that Rocket's story is great in that movie, but I thought that a lot of the other characters and elements were let down. And the Suicide Squad, they essentially just did the same thing that they've done for Guardians of the Galaxy, just with Suicide Squad. So that's all he's really done. And a Superman movie cannot have that kind of humor. And if it does, then it's going to completely ruin it for me. And so I'm wondering, if supposedly if the best case scenario happens and none of that dirty humor is in the Superman movie, is the writing going to hold up? Is it going to be a really masterful writing piece, or is it just going to be kind of average and mediocre? That is my big fear for it, because I don't think that the movie will be bad. I don't think that the movie's going to be a disaster. At least what I could say for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, James Gunn knows what he's doing enough to make it at least an entertaining watch, at least that as a first watch, and have some good action scenes and be true and feel like an actual comic book film. So he could do all that. So I have no doubt that Superman will be fine in that regard. But I think that you need a lot from a Superman film to bring people back to Superman and DC. A Superman film has never got over the $600 million range. And that is like a very high bar to get, because I think if Superman is anything less than 700 million, I think that it will be seen as a flop in the eyes of the studio, and they will question if they can really go forward with this. So this movie, there's a lot riding on it. It's coming out in the midst of a lot of superhero stuff failing. It's supposed to kickstart not just the Superman franchise, but a DC universe as a whole. And I'm still wondering, can the script be that well written? But as of now, I'm at least piqued enough to see how it is going forward. And you know what? It would be really nice to be able to have DC movies just be normal again and not just this crazy drama 24/7, and just have the characters be themselves and directors who are trying to do their best with it rather than trying to make some sort of subversive masterpiece like Zack Snyder. However, even if I'm being won over by the Superman stuff, I still really question the rest of the DC universe. Like, even if Gunn does a good job with Superman, I'm like, but do we really want his vision to be with every movie, with every premise? I'm still not sold on his DC slate. I don't like what they're doing with Batman, and that they're having the Batman be one thing in a separate universe, and we're doing another Batman universe supposedly with Andy Muschietti, who's a terrible director, where we're going to have Batman and Damian Wayne, and I hate Damian Wayne already. So much Batman lore you're jumping over. And I'll just mention it out there, but I was really disappointed with the Suicide Squad's version of Harley, because James Gunn said he was going to base it off of the Paul Dini version, and at least visually he did, but then he just did it as a combination of the 90s Harley and the new Deadpool stuff, which does not mix. And so I'm I'm like, are we going to be saddled with that just because James Gunn is in charge? But we don't know if having somebody else would mean anything different in that regard. So I'm still not 100% back on board with DC. I wouldn't even say that I'm even 50% back on board with it, but it's like turned a corner for me, just being turned off completely from anything DC to my interest is at least peaked. And at least that says something, that there could be something there. And I really do hope that I can eat my words of what I said before, that James Gunn was absolutely the wrong choice for this, and that we actually get an amazing Superman movie that reinvigorates the character and is just a big box office smash next year. So that's all I got for you guys today. What do you guys think of these Superman set photos? Do you think that this movie, that it bodes well for this movie coming out? And do you think that there is a chance that this Superman film could reinvigorate not only the character of Superman, but the DC universe at large? It's early, guys. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you, patrons, as always, and I will see you guys next time.